he's like, well, what do you think? What do you think their main food source is? I said, man, I would say hellgrammite and crawdads.
Yeah.
And he's like 2% combined.
Dude.
Made contact with one of the fisheries biologists and got to know him, and we get to talking, and I started asking him. I'm like, hey man, I'm like, of these surveys you guys got, I said, can you tell me about them? I said, on the Illinois River, what are the smallmouth eating? And he's like, well, what are you trying to figure out exactly? And I said, man, I want to know what I can put in front of a smallmouth, and he is going to eat it every time.
Yeah.
And the first thing that he tells me that I haven't really thought about, and I don't know if a lot of guys have researched this or thought about it, but smallmouth are visual feeders.
Okay.
I mean, they've got big lateral lines. They've got ears. Everybody, they talk. Grandpa talked about, be quiet. Don't talk loud. Fish can hear you. Blah blah blah. Well, they can't really hear you. They decipher sound differently, but a smallmouth is a lot more of a visual feeder than any of the other bass species.
Okay.
So that got me thinking, well, in the beginning, I would tie clousers. Clousers were easy to tie, a lot of gray over white, a lot of chartreuse and white, all chartreuse, some olives. But, they were just basically 3-inch long bait fish patterns, and there wasn't a lot of visual, changes or characteristics to it. They're just, a couple of lateral lines contrasting each other, and they're 3 inches long. Well, so anyway, I asked him, so what is in a smallmouth diet in the Illinois River that I can throw in front of them and they're going to eat it 100, every time?
Yeah.
And he's like, well, what do you think? What do you think their main food source is? I said, man, I would say hellgrammite and crawdads.
Yeah.
And he's like 2% combined.
Dude.
And I'm like, well, is that 2% combined in season? Like, because I know crawdads are more plentiful at certain times of the year. And he's like, do you ever see very many crawdads in Illinois? And I said, honestly, I don't. I said, it's just in certain areas where there's like big chunk rock, or, in an outside corner where, like a rock face is sloughed off, or, most of it's pea gravel, and just don't really see crawdads.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, there's not a very good population of crawdads. And he said, in hellgrammites combined, that's about 2% of their diet. And I said, well, what is it? He said, it's bait fish. And he says, and it's seasonal. It's bait fish in certain areas of the river, and, certain types of water, and certain times of the year, different species of bait fish are their primary food source, and it changes from month to month. So, I found that interesting, and I started researching it. I started researching the bait fish species. So then my question was, well, what's the most plentiful bait fish in the Illinois River? And he's like, well, the upper part, the middle part, or the lower part. I'm like, well, what are you telling me? And he's like, it's all different. Certain parts of the river has more species of certain types of bait fish because of the water quality, and the water types. And so basically, I can tell you that the number one food source for smallmouth in the Illinois River, dating back as long as they've been collecting these surveys, which is the late 80s, is called a central stone roller.
I was going to guess that because you've put it on your Facebook, and I was like, I need to remember that one.
Yep. So the central stone roller, and I'm sure that some of the other streams in the Ozarks are the same. I mean, a lot of these, the highest population of bait fish in the Illinois River, 12 months out of the year, is the Ozark minnow.
Okay.
And it's top 3. Depending on the type of water you're in, the time of year that you're fishing, it's always in the top 3 just because of population.
And this because of those surveys and that data that you collected.
Yeah,
gosh, that's
those
so
surveys. Cool. So I took these surveys, and they date back to like the late 80s. 86, I think, is the farthest one back that I've gotten. And those surveys, and it'll give you a fish count, for specific stretches of the river. And, you can look at the population, and you can kind of tell, well, this month in the year, was, say, August, or, December. and winter months versus summer months, spring months versus fall months. And then you can do some research on those types of bait fish, and some of them want backwater, low flow, a lot of sun. Some of them want deep water. Some of them want vegetation. Some of them hang out around grass. Some of them want to be around rocks or timber. And, so you can kind of, once you learn the river, you know that, hey man, we're coming up on this shallow flat, it's in the sun and there's a lot of grass. Well, carmine shiners or silver shiners, that's what's gonna be in here. And that's what the fish are most likely going to be feeding on, because the central stone rollers aren't in this type of water, because we're on some bedrock flat or some big clay bank. And the central stone rollers, they want to be in moderate current around chunk rock. Same thing, Ozark minnows, they're going to want to be in higher flows, moderate current anyway, shallower water. So just changing the approach to, the type of bait fish that we're throwing in the type of waters that we're fishing. And, it's been a game changer.